something, and I love this. You were talking about it like a funnel or something like that, and you said that you fall into this trap too. And I would imagine that everyone does, is that now dating is different because you're online and you have all of these different options out in front of you, right? But
Right.
we become a little more choosy based on it could be how tall the person is, what the person looks like, where they live, geographical location, all these different things where you start weeding everything out, where you're narrowing your options down, right?
Right. Because back in the day when we would meet people in the wild, you didn't have all that information, right? People aren't walking around like it on their T-shirt, like this is my religion, this is my height, this is, how much alcohol I drink and how regularly. But now we have all that information on this one page and we decide right there, oh, no, that's not really what I'm looking for. But in the wild, people would go on first, maybe probably attraction, chemistry, personality. And we kind of lose that when we're just looking online. And unfortunately, most people are. Do you know many people who have met in the wild?
You talk about people I know?
Yeah.
Just a couple. Just a
one.
few.
Yeah, there's not many.
Most of the people I know now
Workplace.
met online of some sort.
Yeah. If it's not in their work, then, or sometimes an introduction from a friend, but generally it's online. And part of that, I think, is it's easier to be rejected online, right? Rather than going up to somebody and saying, hey, I'd really like to get to know you better. And they're like, sorry, that's hard. I mean, and when you're used to like having this kind of silent rejection, it's harder to put on that thick skin, I think, especially for men. A lot of times we rely on the men taking the first move, which we shouldn't be, but I still do it well. And so there's like, yeah, I think I'll just go online and get rejected that way. And then you don't really meet people outside of that. So unfortunately, then we go back to this funnel idea of now we're going through, we're putting all these things that we think is what we're looking for. And we're potentially missing out on somebody who might have a couple of those missing. And that might otherwise, if you were in the wild, you would have connected with.
Yeah. Do you think if you meet someone in the wild, so to speak, that didn't match up perfectly with what you normally see online, that you might give someone the benefit of the doubt and you start communicating with them and you find out like, hey, there's a connection here?
Well, your personality comes through where it doesn't online.
Yeah.
Right. Well, some people will get creative with their photos or they'll put some humor into their profile, which is nice. So you can get a little idea of their personality. But, to actually be face to face with somebody, you have the opportunity. But it also can work against you. Because if you're a real jerk, then it's like, it's probably not going to help you get a date. But it is what our world is now. But that doesn't mean that people can't take those opportunities. Because I will say this, that a man that actually takes the move and approaches a woman and does it, with confidence and humor and personality is going to have such a great chance of actually getting a date because nobody else is doing it. And the women's like, oh my God, that person actually just asked me out or, actually was flirting with me.
I see what you're saying. So now people are so accustomed to the online experience that if you get approached by someone in the wild, someone that shows confidence and interest, maybe some humor, that someone might be taken by that because they're not accustomed to that anymore.
Totally. I mean, it's a great way to stand out from the rest.
And of course, when we grew up, we grew up before online options, right? So if I wanted to approach a lady or a girl at school, I had to actually walk up and have the stones to be able to go through that entire process.
You didn't even have text messaging, Chad.
No text message.
Can you believe it?
No, you had to make a phone call. So if you wanted to communicate with the person outside of school, it had to be a phone call and to where you're, at least, audibly speaking to someone. Totally different than being online.
Yeah.
It's much easier to type and send a message.
Totally. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to change things, and the other thing that's happening too, I think with the Me Too movement, I feel bad for men. They're kind of like, what do we do? Because, I think they feel like they can't even like look or flirt or look a woman in the eye. I swear, so many men just like walk with radar. They're just like looking straight ahead. They're not taking in anything around them. And women like to be noticed, and even if it's just, oh, you look great today. Even if it's somebody that's not somebody they would date, just a very friendly smile, compliment. Women receive that well. I think the ones that don't are making men afraid not to do that.
Well, I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like if you're at it could be anywhere. You could be at, a shopping center. You could be at a restaurant. You could be at a bar, wherever the case may be. If you approach someone with a certain class and say, hey, you look really nice, or you just give a compliment that's sincere, that's usually going to be received well, I would think.
Totally. But how you say it, if it's just like feels like a cheesy pickup line, then probably not.
Yeah.
And not, even if it's not even a way of trying to date somebody, but just being complimentary and just eye contact. I'm such a big person on eye contact. Like even going on a hike with random strangers. Like I always want to like acknowledge that there's somebody else in this wilderness, on this trail, at the same place I am, with nobody else around, and just look at them and smile and say good morning or whatever. And so many people will not even look at you. Like they just like, like they, as if they don't even see you, which is surprising to me. I think just smile and being friendly goes a long way.
Yeah, eye contact is very important. But for me, I just notice with younger individuals that I come across, sometimes, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but I do notice that eye contact at times may be more challenging for them. But
such a great thing to teach our kids.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit about confidence last week. So if you're maybe some weak in some other areas that somebody might find attractive, if you have the confidence, those other areas kind of can get forgotten.
Yeah.
If you have the personality and the confidence, it goes a long way.
Well, what I want to know, Celeste, when it comes to, conversation, you start dating, how many dates do you need before you start talking about, the goals and the things that you want to accomplish to see if you're on the same page and see how things align? Well, when is too soon for that? When should you start those type of discussions?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And obviously it's going to be different for everybody. But I think first you got to decide, is this somebody who I think I might want to spend a significant amount of my life with? Right. And if it's not, then why bother having any of that conversation?
Yeah.
And I think that, several dates, takes, I think, a good handful of dates to probably say, okay, this may be somebody this I could have a relationship with.
Yeah.
Right. You got to be in some different scenarios and really kind of let their true personality come through.
Yeah.
Or not just being on their best behavior on the first couple dates.
Yeah.
And then I think it's, with this eulogy idea, like that we don't know a lot of these things about our partners. People are going through their whole marriages sometimes and realizing the things they don't know. But we just don't think to get this information, right? Because you do have to ask and be curious. Recognizing that there's things about each other that you should probably know. I think I'd like to know that before I introduced him to my son, before we lived together, and definitely before, I got married to somebody. Certain things, one, how do you want to live the rest of your life? Like I said, I want to travel the world, continue to. And so if I had, somebody was like, well, I don't really want to travel. I hate planes. I'd be like, well, that probably is not going to work for me because I just don't see my life unless I was willing to say, okay, well, as long as you're fine with me doing that, then you can stay in Portland and I'm going to see the world with a friend, right? If I was fine with that. Personally, I'm not because I need to have at least a ballroom partner.
Yeah.
So one of my dreams. So having those conversations about things that are important to you, I would say do it before you waste much time, because all of a sudden, what if you start falling in love with somebody and you're like, oh, great, but you want to live in a 5,000 square foot mansion and I want to live in a Sprinter van down by the river or wherever, you could have a very different vision for your lifestyle. How many people are talking about that before they live together or get married? Like really getting down to lifestyle, how you parent, what your beliefs are. How do you, what is your expectation for a partner? Like if we were going to be married, what would your expectation be for how much free time? Is it okay if I go play golf all day with the guys every Sunday? Is that going to be a problem? What's the expectation for how we do our finances? If we make different incomes, are we putting equal amount of money into the pot for the household? These are kind of good things to know.
Yeah, those are great questions.
Because if you find out later and you're already into it, you're already engaged, because some religions, Catholicism I know does, and I'm sure many others, require you to go through this kind of counseling workshop, which is great, but it's kind of late at that point, right? Because you're already engaged. So you're probably not going to call off the wedding, but you might have a couple of red flags going off.
That's very.
Oops, I didn't know that about you.
Okay, so this is great. So you start dating, and after whatever the number is, a few dates, several dates, if you start to realize hey, I could see myself spending a significant period of time with this person, once that light bulb goes off, then you can start to have the more deeper conversations about what we just discussed.
Right. And it can start with as much as just sharing yourself. And again, some people haven't thought about it themselves. So thinking about what their ideas and how they'd like to live their life. what that would look like, and then share that. And then when they share that, then the other person should be sharing it as well, right? Be like,
Yes.
I'm curious, what would your take on that? Does that sound good to you? I mean, how would you do it differently? Just to start the conversation.
For the big things that are really important to you, like for you traveling the world, there are certain things that are like non-negotiable. Where like, I don't want to give up that dream. Then there are some things that don't they fall a little bit below that, where it's like
Right.
you could go either way on it, right?
Right. I've decided at this point in my life, I have my personal core values. And I think to me, a lot of them are pretty much non-negotiable, like if they're not shared.
Yeah.
And I think as you get older, it's harder, right? Because we know more. We've had more experiences of the relationships that have worked and the ones that haven't, and the traits and characteristics of people. And so then back to that kind of funnel getting smaller. Not only is there less people single to date, but there's less people who have not on that list of things like that you want to stay away from.
Yeah, I agree. If you meet someone that hey, I could spend a significant period of my time with this individual, these dreams and these things that are important, it varies from person to person, right? Like what's important to them and how they want to live the rest of their life. Like it varies from individual to individual. What's important to you may not be as critical to me and so forth.
Right. We are all our own unique individuals. Like we said, like earlier, it's not on our shirts when we're walking around live. We have to either read it on an online profile or share it. And some of it's information that might be too much that makes us filter people out when we might have a great chemistry and connection without, we were just talking on break about political affiliations, and that maybe that's something not to dive into right away. And I was saying, well, actually, if somebody's really far on either side, I think you should put that on a profile, because then people can get out of there quick if they're on the other side of it, because why waste the time?
Yeah, if that's something that's really important to you and you're, far left or far right, that's probably something you want to put out there to let people know, like, I'm an activist, or this is something I'm really passionate about. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's something that you need to let people know about, because, the person that's seeking you may not have a strong tie to one side or the other.
Right. I do have a friend who actually just got married last year, and they are on those extremes. But they were like childhood, like sweethearts or friends at least, and now they're in their late 30s. And, you have the ultra liberal vegan and the, Trump supporter, Republican, very different social circles and lifestyles, but they love each other.
Wow.
And they're making it work. I mean, they just got married, and I wish them all the best. And so it can happen, but I don't know that there's many cases like that it's a big hurdle to add to it. So
that's actually refreshing to hear, though, because it's nice to know that, people can embrace each other with some of their differences. I think that's a healthy thing.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
We have to in life be able to accept each other's differences.
Yeah. I mean, like you and I are having a conversation right now, but we're not perfectly aligned on everything under the sun. It's not even possible.
I know. We haven't even gone through the whole list yet.
I know. So I like this. I love the idea of the conversation and really getting to the heart of these things. Like for instance, like you were talking about, like I have a friend who just retired and he got himself a fifth wheel, and he's single, but now he's traveling around the country because he's got different states that he needs to check off his list that he hasn't been to.
Yeah.
And he's perfectly like content living out of his fifth wheel. He's like, I have total freedom. He goes, I can go here, I can go there. I don't have a schedule right now, and I've got so many places I want to check out. And he loves it. And I think that's great. And there's probably someone that would love to join him on that journey.
Right.
But there are some that want no part of living out of a fifth
They're like,
wheel,
give me
right?
a 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would be, if that was something that somebody was passionate about doing in their retirement, because it's not just like, oh, I'm going to do a trip around country for a year. I mean, that's a lifestyle, or people are doing that throughout their retirement, right?
Yes.
And so if that was kind of like what you've been waiting to retire to do, yeah, it's probably an important thing to make sure somebody wants to join you on that. You're not just like pulling them out of the 5-star hotel experience to do that.
Now, what do you think is a way to, let's say you're several dates in, you're like, okay, this person I could see myself spending a lot of time with, and you want to start this conversation about, how do you see yourself living the rest of your life? Where do you want to be when you're 80 or however far down the road? How do you start that conversation in a smooth way?
Maybe find a way to segue into it, I think you might scare somebody off, especially, in the first handful of dates. Like, let's start talking about our future. That might be a little soon, but we can also just start without even asking questions. We can start looking at how somebody lives their life. We were talking on break about, our core value around health and fitness. You can like see how somebody lives their life in that way. And so even without asking, you could kind of know,
Like, would you
but
just present your core values to someone if you had been on several dates
I
and you were comfortable
have
talking to them?
not on a couple dates, but before like any commitment. And because one of my core values is like adventure and fun. I like to do things like not being like I mentioned last week, not being sucked into the couch. Like I like to watch a movie, but I don't want to have that be the regular thing to be on the couch. So I like to travel. I like to do things, like to go to live music. I like a weekend event going on somewhere. I just like to be active, taking in whatever's going on in the world. So for me, that's the core value that if somebody's lifestyle is to just be on the couch every night, that's not a good fit for me. And so I like to kind of understand that because you're not really, you can kind of date somebody and see, oh, what did you do last weekend or what, and kind of get an idea of how busy they keep themselves. But at some point, you need to probably ask some questions to find out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because if you find out that if adventure is one of your core values and you're spending time with someone that you think is wonderful, but then you realize like they don't want adventure. They enjoy just being a homebody, right?
Yeah.
And being sucked into the couch. And there's nothing wrong with that. There are a lot of people that
Right.
enjoy
They'll
that
find
type
somebody
of
else
peace.
that loves that idea.
Yeah. But for you, that's like that would be a red flag. Like I can't
and
live like
I'm not saying I'm not sit on the couch. It's just that is a go-to for a lot of people 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I would just wilt away. And I know that about myself. When people are younger, they can easily be swayed out of those core beliefs they haven't really established yet, right? They're still learning who they are. If you're meeting in your 20s and your 30s, you're still kind of sorting these things out for yourself. So your inclination may be to be somebody like me, out and about, traveling, seeing the world, doing things. And you might start dating somebody who's the opposite, and you might get sucked into their couch, right? And so then you morph into that and you become a couple, you get married and you're doing that. But your drive, what your calling is, feels different than what you're doing. And I think that is where some people, when they don't have these conversations early, can run into a problem in life because they kind of put themselves together in a way that once they went through life, that they realize, oh, actually, quite different.